this is can become like a little bit of a rabbit hole, because we can go really deep into vertical development, but it's fascinating.
Talent Transformation webcasts are brought to you by the Talent Transformation Guild to help you understand and prepare for the new world of work.
Yay!
Hello. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Manoella. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
So when did you move to the UK?
So I moved to the UK 5 years ago. Actually, the first time I moved here was more than 10 years ago.
Okay.
To do my master's degree in organizational psychology. And then I went back to Brazil 2 years later and stayed for 5 years in Brazil. And now it has been 5 years I've been back here. So yeah, it's in total maybe 7.5 years I've been living in the UK, in London specifically.
Brazil is one of my favorite countries in the world. So I have a lot of friends in that country and throughout South America. Very lucky in that respect. And our video editor is based in, I'm going to mispronounce this, but it's in Curitiba.
Curitiba, yeah.
Curitiba, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he'll like a quick call out. So quick call out to William in Curitiba.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Forgive me for occasionally looking away from the screen, but I have my notes, and so I needed to check out my notes. But you're coming to us, Manoella, with extensive experience in organizational and people development. And you've worked for some of the largest talent consulting companies that I'm aware of. Can you just give us a flavor of who you've been working for over the years?
Yeah, so I've been in this field for about 15 years. And in the past 9 years, I was working for Korn Ferry, is an American company that works in the consulting that they do is really focused on people and organization, right? So that's what that's what I was doing. And when we talk about these two things, well, there are many other sub areas, and the areas where I was focusing on was leadership development, assessment and succession, and looking into talent strategy. So how do we implement frameworks around leadership potential, or implement assessments, or think about all of those topics around talent?
And as you know, I find this whole area fascinating, and you're an expert in this area, so I kind of bow to your expertise. It's what you do to me feels like magic. I mean, when you talk about leadership development, understanding the right competencies, succession planning, it's so important. So that leads me on, I guess, to what are the services that you provide? Because you help companies with this kind of thing. Maybe you can talk to us about the kind of consulting that you do.
So now I'm a co-founder of Reinventors. And basically in Reinventors, what we do is I have a co-founder, so I have someone else that has joined me, Jonathan, and together we bring kind of two worlds that have so much in common and that have not been talking or hanging out together very much. So one is organization development as it stands in leadership development and looking at structures and helping to design organizations, looking at culture, etc. And the tech world. And I know it is a very broad tech world, but people in technology and in software development, it's just so complex to develop products and software development that they have become really, really evolved in creating tools that support collaboration, that support people to manage conflict, and so and just build relationships to be able to be more effective, to be more productive. And so what we do is we bring these two worlds to really to talk and to hang out and to say, what are the new, not just technologies that we have for remote collaboration or for all kinds of collaboration and working with other people, such as Zoom, and there are technologies, but there are also social technologies. And what is that? It's just a kind of new ways and new frameworks through which we see a relationship. So I can give a few examples, okay? One is called nonviolent communication. So many people in the world, we know what nonviolent communication is, but it's a framework for having conversations with people where you understand needs, feelings, and you make requests for people. And you handle conversations in a completely different way so that everybody gets their needs met. This is one example. There's another one that's called authentic relating. How do you jump into a relationships with your full whole self? And so these are just two examples of some of this what we are calling social technologies, because they are a little bit more advanced ways of really going deeper into our relationships, and so that we can collaborate better together, we can innovate. And so this is kind of just a broad idea, like bringing this so it's new ways of working for new ways of being human, right? We are kind of almost entering into a new level of consciousness, if you will, around so many different topics. And yes, I'm talking from a Western perspective, but I see that there are trends, because we're so connected. There are trends that are connecting all of us, Western, Eastern, without ignoring the differences, but there are things that are connecting us. And with the pandemic right now, we can see how connected we are, how we're going through very similar things, and we have to collaborate as societies to develop a vaccine. And this week I was just reading, there is one vaccine developed here in Oxford in the UK. Mm-hmm. And the first place it's being tested is in Brazil right now, because Brazil is going through the peak right now, unfortunately. And we really, really need, and so there's this collaboration happening. So why would every single country in the world try to develop their own vaccine, right? When you can collaborate and you can test and you can produce and test in a high scale, for example. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. There's a lot to say about that.
I think you raised some very, very interesting points. I mean, this thing about you and your co-founder bringing different kinds of expertise to your team, which is one of the challenges that we face these days in the specialization. But a specialist purely on their own can maybe not bring as much value when they start commingling with other specialists. As you quote the example with Oxford and Brazil, is that Brazil have a desperate need, and Oxford University potentially has something to satisfy that need. And so that cooperation, collaboration brings in this synergy that's born from that cooperation and collaboration. During the pandemic, we're all busy cooperating and collaborating because there's a common enemy, which is the coronavirus. Yeah. And so that's what's driving us. But when there isn't such a common enemy, we maybe don't cooperate and collaborate so easily or so well. And so these ideas, as you were talking, I was thinking this sounds like performance support as far as technology to help us have improved conversations with our colleagues and coworkers.
Yeah, I would call them like maybe a social tool or social technology, something like that, you know. Mm-hmm. So one that I'm really, really fond of is called nonviolent communication. So it was developed by a guy called Michael Rosenberg. And there's quite a lot of content online, but if we have to summarize to key points of what is it, it's really bringing. So basically what Marshall says is that we all have needs as humans. Yeah, we all have several needs, and they are all legitimate and beautiful, and there is no conflict between us at the level of needs. And these needs can be, I have need for recognition, for being seen, for being loved, for being taken care, for a need maybe for collaborating with other people and just like doing things together. Mm-hmm. So there is no conflict at the level of needs. When do we have conflicts as human beings? At the level of our strategies to meet those needs. So we sometimes learn, and we learn from our upbringing or culture, or maybe it's lack of learning. We just create these strategies to meet our needs. And many of those strategies, they are just not very effective. So
we just know how to use the strategies. The fact that it's not working for us escapes our notice.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for example, I am feeling angry, and I really need to look into my anger, because I'm sorry, I will bring this anger to the workplace if I'm feeling angry somehow, if I'm feeling constantly angry. There's something wrong. And we say that you're feeling angry because there is a need that is not being met in you. But I might try to deal with that anger through exerting power over other people, by really screaming at them, or by being really autocratic, or by being really, I don't know. And those strategies are not very intelligent. First, because they're going to create more conflict. And second, because I won't have my need met. And maybe my need is for understanding. I really need to talk to other people and say that I'm being overworked, for example. I'm really angry because I'm resenting work. I'm just working too much and I'm not having life outside of work. It can be anything. And so at the level of strategies, that's where the conflict happens. And so we need to learn new ways of getting our needs met. Yeah. And we can get our needs met. So what we do is we make requests to other people. Instead of demanding that people should behave in a certain way, we really come from a place of asking them to help to meet our needs. And so this is one point. So it's being aware of your needs and your emotions, then really learning new strategies to meet those needs by making requests to people. So if there's something we're having a meeting and you say something to me, and me and my co-founder, we're already working like this. So yesterday he made a request to me. He said, can you be really careful when you say this word, because this just carries a meaning for me.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay, I get what you're coming from. So I'm a psychologist. I might say things and just throw things at people and without knowing. And he was like, maybe you can be more careful. And so we got into an agreement. So he made a request and we got into an agreement that whenever I talk about a certain topic, I'm going to be more careful. So we avoid conflict, right? And he doesn't go away. We let go of the meeting and he goes away feeling really resented at me. Right. Yeah. We already solved the issue in the moment.
Yeah.
Is that good?
That's great advice. Great advice. In fact, it's unfortunate that my co-founder, Martin Belton, isn't here, because he'd probably be nodding his head and saying, see, I told you so. But we'll probably have one of those conversations on our next call. That's great. So how do you bring groups together and foster inclusion? So we've been talking about from an individual level to have our needs met, but then you start dealing with groups. So it's more than one person. I suspect it gets more complex there. So how do you deal with the inclusion within groups?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question, because we can say, what is this? What is a group? Is it a group of 3 people? But we can also say that a group is a whole function, within the organization. So we have the whole organization, and then we have nested systems, right? The whole organization is a system, and then you have different functions or different groups. So it really will depend on what is it that you're trying to achieve with that particular group. If you're trying to solve a conflict, or if you're trying to create a different culture. We usually say that a culture, it's something that an organization has, and within groups, we call it climate, because it's more changeable. It really depends on the leader of that group, or how that group operates. So if the culture is the atmosphere and the whole environment, the group has a climate. Yeah. And so it really, really depends. But many of those techniques that we are just talking about here, so authentic relating or nonviolent communication, and really, for example, learning more about diversity and inclusion, and what is that? So some of those things we do with groups as well. And when we want to support a group to develop, you might want to take the whole group and go somewhere else, for example, and work in an offsite. Or so at Reinventors, we want to offer retreats as soon as we can go out there again and have people collectively together.
These virtual retreats are not working.
Yeah, it's really hard, huh? So this is one of the things that we want to start offering as soon as we go back into the world, and bring people together to do different practices. And then it's about really mixing different techniques, really depending on what is it that the question that this group wants answered? Because it can vary quite a lot, no?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't very precise in my answer, but I guess it's because...
No, I got it. And I'm sure everyone else listening will get it. So it's fine. So just breaking that, the retreats issue apart, do you have any suggestions about how to do it virtually? Because we know that when we do retreats in the physical space, it brings out elements of fun and play and newness and intrigue. And then we discover our colleagues through that lens, which then often improves the communications in the workplace, because we've kind of witnessed natural behaviors of people in a natural environment. And that's why it's what helps make retreats powerful. Any ideas about how to simulate that in a virtual environment?
Yes. In fact, we were doing that this week with my co-founder. We were applying ourselves a few tools to see how it resonated with each other and also to learn more about each other. So there are a few tools. So for example, there is one that's called World of Insights. And they have really great tools. They have card decks, and they kind of use gamification or this idea of, card sorting, etc., to help tackle or answer different questions, difficult questions. And so we did one that was about leadership. So it would be something that you could easily do through Zoom. And you get so someone is kind of the one that's facilitating the game, and you have the first card to do a check-in, and it's really fun because I had to say, for example, answer a question, what was the most fun thing that you did today? And so you can share something that's really personal and that really brings people together. But then you also go on to asking each other different questions, like if you are in a leadership role for the first time, what would the first thing that you would do? Right? And you being a CEO, you are the founder of Talent Transformation now. And so I could ask this question to you, and that will reveal how you go about a new situation, how you go about leadership, what is your mindset, right?
Right.
So he asked me that question. Yeah. And I was like, I need to come up with a really good answer. I'm a leadership consultant.
I don't want you turning the tables on me and then you start interviewing me.
Yeah.
But we could probably have a whole series on those kind of virtual games. But that sounds very intriguing, and I get it. And I suspect there's a lot of smart psychologists that are teaming up with very smart technologists to come up with these virtual games that can be that we can take the physical into the. So I've certainly done development meetings with cards where you can kind of exchange them and shuffle them, and doing that in a virtual world sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
So just turning to diversity. So it's a very topical subject at the moment. And people sometimes focus on one aspect of diversity, whether that be race or gender, or etc. But of course, we need for organizations to function well to have other sets of diversity as well. Maybe diversity of style, diversity of personalities, but diversity of communication methods, etc. Yeah. And so when we have diversity, which has been proven to be good and healthy, so we want to encourage more of it, but then we can risk people feeling like an outsider. And maybe they've been treated as an outsider to society for some time. And so when they come to the group might be trying to include them, but they either don't have the tools to do it or they don't know how to do it. And so the result is that we have diversity, but we don't have inclusion. Could you just talk about your work on diversity and inclusion and how you think and help people with that?
Yeah. So I dare say that diversity and inclusion is one of the most important topics that we are discussing, and we need to be discussing more and more in all societies all over the world. So that's how important and how strong a stance I take around this topic. It is a lens through which you see life. So it is impacting every single decision that we make, how we relate to other people, how we consume. So it is just so important that it's hard to actually explain to you right now, like how, well, we're going to go into a little bit more the details of it, but how much impacts our lives and everybody's lives in societies and organizations. Yeah. So that's how important this conversation around diversity and inclusion is. And maybe one way of going about it is really trying to unpick what is it that we are talking about here. Because I can use a word and that word has a different meaning to you. And therefore we are already starting from a different space, right? A different place. So maybe what we can do is just talk about what is diversity first. Is that okay with you?
Of course, absolutely. I'm all ears. Thank you.
So if we unpick what diversity means, we can already see that diversity means different things for different people and for different generations and for different geographies. Examples are millennials tend to understand this word diversity by diversity of backgrounds, of styles, and some millennials, and this is from a Deloitte research, millennials tend to see diversity as a very positive thing that we need to take advantage of for innovation, for more creative work, for example.
Right.
Baby boomers, when you say this word diversity, it triggers a different thing in them. And they think about representation in the workplace. They think about the external dimensions. So they think about women, they think about Black people, they think about, so basically that single word is triggering different worlds within ourselves. Mm-hmm. In Brazil, diversity deeply connected to disabilities. In the US, is very connected to Black people and white people. In Europe, and also women, gender is something that's in the US. In Europe, very strong women. We have quotas for that. So policies will drive how people were thinking about it, because then organizations have to meet policies, right? And to also here in the UK, for example, there is an expression that's called the BAME to refer to diversity. Oh. And BAME means Black, Asian, and minority ethnic.
Okay.
This term is a used term to refer to people from diverse backgrounds. But then you look at the term, and people that are being called BAME, they don't call me that. Mm. I mean, I'm Asian, but you don't know if I'm Southeast Asian, if I'm right. Southwest Asian, if I'm East Asian. It's completely different.
Yes.
And so it's really about perspective taking, this word of diversity. But one thing I can say is that in nature, everything's diverse. We have many different kinds of species of animals, insects, plants, flowers. So life is naturally diverse. And we are not different. And there are different types of diversity that we can go from a very tangible visual element to abstract elements. So we can go from, I look like a woman, so my sex, I'm a woman, and you're a man. Then we can also say that I am, shorter than maybe you're taller. So they're very visual, things that we can describe, to things that are less tangible, like styles of communication, ways of thinking, perspective. So I am a white woman from Brazil, but I live in the UK, so I'm already have a different perspective to someone that is a white woman, Brazilian, that has never lived here. Mm-hmm. So perspective is another dimension of diversity, and interestingly enough, it's one that we can develop. So perspective is something that we can develop because we can seek for new ways of seeing things, right?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, that's really helpful. Thank you. You're clearly an expert in this, and I'm learning from everything you're telling me. I know you presented, you've prepared an interesting slide that builds up. I wonder, and it's to do with equality, equity, inclusion. I would love to have you talk us through that.
Yeah. So I think there's another thing, as you say, there is there are terms that are associated with diversity and inclusion, right? And inclusion is the other word, is the other little word that it is very important to unpick there. And basically, when we think about inclusion, we can think it from, there are two things there, yeah? One is around behaviors. And so we are talking about how I treat you. What are my skills in being inclusive? What is my mindset, for example? And the other one is what we call structural inclusion. Is the system, is the element in the system, being the system, the organization. So it could, from an organizational perspective, a company would have processes, policies, systems. And so we can talk from an individual human level, which is how are people being inclusive or not, but also how a system is. Obviously, it's created by humans, and so how system is biased or not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very important distinction. And when we talk about behavior, we can even break it down a little further, because one thing is my behavior is how skilled I am in being inclusive. And we certainly were not born being inclusive. We have to sort of learn that, to be inclusive in a way. Oh, I cannot hear you.
Is that true? So you're the expert, so I struggle to challenge you as an expert, but I see kids just kind of playing together, embracing each other at a very young age. It felt to me that maybe we actually learned to exclude people, and that maybe from a young age we were inclusive. But you're the expert. Please tell me more.
I mean, this can become like a little bit of a rabbit hole, because we can go really deep into vertical development, but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So human development theory, and I'm not an expert necessarily in all of the development theories. Yeah, there are few of them.
Yeah.
And even if you look at different ones, you see that they are talking about similar stages. Yes. Yeah. But basically, when we were born, we are basically egocentric. A baby only knows the world for me, is what I want, is what, right? A really small baby. And then we go through different stages. And there is a next stage of, generally speaking, where kids realize it's not all about them. So suddenly they realize that someone is observing them. And so it's not about me. They notice that the other person is looking at them. And they can really be very egocentric and fight with other people to have a toy. But suddenly they realize that they like the colleague, like the other person, the friend, better than the toy. So they don't want to fight over the toy. They want the friend.
Okay, gotcha.
So there is a stage where we are learning how to socialize. Yeah. But we go through several stages of development throughout the whole life. So it doesn't stop in early adulthood.
Yes.
And what happens is that many people will maybe get locked into this way of thinking in group and out group. So what do I mean by that? There are people that I include because these people are similar to me and I feel comfortable around them. And there are some people that I exclude and because I feel somehow that I don't relate to them. And so they are they're not part of my in-group. And in-group can be anything, can be religion, can be where I grew up, my city, it can. Right. And so my first point of view is that in inclusion, you can learn behaviors to include other people. So I can stop talking for a while and give you airtime, for example. If I'm a leader, I will maybe know that men tend to talk more. And then I will say, women, I will say, can you stop for a moment? We only had questions or points from our male team members. I would like to ask the female. So if I'm a leader, I can be conscious of that and learn that, yeah? Because I learned that women just tend to have less airtime. Yeah. But another thing is then my perspective is if I am in my worldview, right, around inclusion. If I really treat people as part of my in-group or my out-group, so I really treat everybody the same regardless of their football team, you know, that's another one. Or I tend to see humans and as our human family. Yeah.
Well, you just had to bring up football teams when you're in England. I'm originally English, and Brazil and England are such great rivals.
Probably not a good
in America,
metaphor,
we
yeah.
call it soccer. We don't call it football, but
yeah.
So, part of the graphics you produced were showing someone at a game. I can't remember whether.
Yes. So let me share. Yeah. So should I share the screen now?
That would be great.
Yeah?
Yes. Thank you.
So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just make it bigger. So these are some of the other terms associated with this diversity and inclusion. And one is equality. And it comes from this sense of fairness. I provide, and it's a football game, yeah? I provide people with the same resources, same resources to everyone. So I don't differentiate, assuming that everybody will benefit from that. So it comes from a good place, from a sense of fairness, yeah? And one a good example, apart from this one, is just traffic system, yeah? The traffic rules, lights, they apply to all of us. Then there's this idea of equity, where I provide different people with different things depending on what they need. And so it comes from a sense of righting a wrong, or coming from this idea that we are not at a level playing field. We didn't have the same access to the same things, and so maybe you can rectify certain situations, so that you can rectify the reality, so that everyone is able to take an equal advantage of something, right?
And the example you used with traffic lights is an interesting one, because in there they have the red light on the top and the green light on the bottom. So even if you're colorblind, you can still work out which light is on. So I think that's maybe resonates with the equity that we're making by positioning the lights, not relying just on color.
Exactly. And here we can say that equality then comes from this assumption that everyone benefits from the same support, but equity comes from this idea that people get different supports that they need. So it's a sort of affirmative action, yeah? So equality is not possible without equity, right? One cannot exist without the other. We're not trying to throw away equality. We're saying that both need to be together. How? Is by having this idea of an inclusive design, or designing an inclusive system. And so I love this image because it says, well, remove that barrier. And when you do an inclusive design, and from the traffic point of view, the example would be, you know, the little ramps that you have at the corner of a pavement, for example.
Yes.
That was originally designed for people in wheelchairs. Yeah, in the UK it's very common. London is very common. You have everywhere. I am a bike rider, and so I always benefit from that. Yeah, from going up and down the pavement. Women or mothers with baby strollers, they also benefit from that. So designing a system that will benefit everyone, and you design with the extreme user in mind, so that you really, and other people can benefit from it. So I think this is a very important distinction. Just a comment, okay? The original drawing that you're seeing here, it was extremely biased. The original drawing, it was a baseball game, and all of the characters here were white, and they were all men. It was really interesting. And as we evolve our awareness around diversity and inclusion, this drawing has been changed dramatically. So you can see that there's a child, you know, there's different generations, different skin colors, etc., different genders.
And just as we come to a close, I noticed that the graphic used had soccer players in yellow shirts, which infers to me that they were Brazilian, because it's yellow and green are the Brazilian colors.
Yeah.
And the other team, the opposing team, which looked as though they were scoring, were in red shirts, which is often associated with the English team. So I think the graphic is very inclusive.
Nice.
Manoella, that is all the time we have for on this episode. I really thank you. That was it was educational. I think it showed to me how I make assumptions that I think I know, and then as I listen to you, it's like there's a huge depth of understanding that specialists and experts get into. So thank you for sharing your expertise. It was really appreciated.
My pleasure. As I said, I'm just absolutely passionate about this topic. And so I am really happy to share and to talk about it. I get carried away and I probably speak too much.
No, not at all. No, it was very appropriate, very enjoyable.
Right.
All right, thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this webcast, please subscribe and like the show. And to learn and understand more about the new world of work, please visit www.talenttransformation.com. Subscribe and become a member. Thank you.